I caught my husband in the act of cheating, an experience I never thought I'd have. Most people would likely confront their spouse upon discovering evidence of infidelity, but I stumbled upon the truth firsthand in a setting I never anticipated, surrounded by unsuspecting witnesses. Suspicions about their relationship had lingered in my mind, but nothing prepared me for witnessing my husband's betrayal so publicly. My name is Christina, a stay-at-home mom to a 6-year-old son. On the day of the incident, my husband had a rare day off, and we had plans for a family outing. However, when I awoke, he was already gone. A message informed me he was tending to his feverish sister, and with no one else home, he expected to return in the evening. As the message came through, a heavy sigh escaped my lips. I had promised my son a day of fun at the amusement park, and he had eagerly anticipated it since the day before. I knew my husband had been shouldering a significant workload lately, immersed in a major project for the past 6 months without respite. This day was meant to be a rare opportunity for our family to bond. Instead, he chose to attend to his sister's needs. She supposedly had a fiancé, rendering her capable of managing on her own. Yet my husband's penchant for playing caretaker to his sister prevailed. It wasn't the first time his sister's needs took precedence over our family plans. His fixation on his sister had always unsettled me. He once admitted that he was drawn to me because of my resemblance to her, coupled with my supposedly exceptional qualities. While I acknowledged his sister's beauty and kindness when I met her long ago, being likened to her always left me feeling uneasy. It seemed the highest compliment he could offer, but the underlying implications left me feeling uncomfortable. My husband used to express his desire for both a son and a daughter, often initiating intimacy. However, since the birth of our son, there's been a noticeable decline in our physical connection to the point where it's non-existent now. Considering our youth and my husband's prior enjoyment of intimacy, suspicions arise that he may be seeking it elsewhere. Betrayal is one thing I could perhaps forgive, albeit reluctantly, but what troubles me more is his consistent absence, even on days off like today. Spending time with our child should be a natural inclination, yet he seems indifferent. Our son, deeply attached to his father, becomes distraught when he's absent. Despite ample opportunities, my husband fails to engage with our son, neglecting simple gestures like birthday gifts or attending school functions. Instead, he retreats to his room, engrossed in endless gaming sessions, disconnected from family life. If this continues, our once close father-son bond risks fading into unfamiliarity. I grew increasingly skeptical of my husband's claims about being engrossed in a major project, considering his prolonged absences from home. Seeking clarification, I reached out to a former classmate employed at the same company. Is my husband truly buried in work as he claims? I inquired, a hint of suspicion in my tone. My classmate chuckled before responding, absolutely not. If anything, your husband has earned a reputation as a window-side employee. He appears disinterested and clocks out on time every day. Confirmation of my suspicions sent a wave of realization crashing over me. It aligned perfectly with my observations. Despite purportedly leading a significant project, his modest salary and lack of exhaustion contradicted his narrative. Such inconsistencies only fueled my doubts about his fidelity. Frustration weighed heavily on me as I finished preparing breakfast. Glancing at the time, I furrowed my brow in concern. It was unusual for my son not to be up by 7 a.m., especially since he typically woke early. Now, it was already past that hour, and if we didn't hurry, he'd miss the nursery school bus. Hastily, I made my way to his room to rouse him. Entering his room, I found him still fast asleep. "It's morning, sweetheart, time to wake up," I called out, expecting a swift response. Instead, all I heard was a strained groan. Alarmed, I reached out to touch his forehead and was met with intense heat. Anxiety surged through me as I gently shook his shoulder, urging him to wake. "Mama, I can't breathe," he murmured weakly, his words sending a chill down my spine. Panic threatened to consume me as thoughts raced through my mind. With news of an outbreak at the nursery school circulating, dread seized me. Could my son be afflicted too? Reports of children succumbing to the illness only heightened my fear, and I dreaded the possibility of losing him. In a frantic bid for help, I reached for my phone, dialing my husband's number repeatedly. Yet each attempt went unanswered, leaving me to grapple with fear and uncertainty alone. Without a moment to spare, I bypassed waiting for an email response and reached out to my mother for urgent first aid guidance. With her nursing expertise, she was my go-to expert in moments like these. Swiftly following her precise instructions, I fashioned an ice pack and took my son's temperature, finding it alarmingly high at over 102.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Without hesitation, I dialed for an ambulance and tended to my son, ensuring he stayed hydrated while awaiting medical assistance. Concerned about the potential for heat stroke, as my mother had cautioned, I acted swiftly to mitigate any further risks. As the ambulance arrived, I faced the sobering reality that I couldn't accompany my son due to infection precautions. Left with no alternative, I hailed a taxi and hurried to the hospital where he would be treated. Throughout the ordeal, I persisted in attempting to reach my husband, despite knowing the futility of my efforts. Dishearteningly, my attempts went unanswered, prompting me to leave a desperate message online, clinging to the hope that he might see it and respond if he possessed a shred of responsibility. Upon reaching the hospital, I anxiously awaited outside the emergency treatment room, fervently praying for my son's swift recovery. Memories of losing my father in a similar emergency room flooded my mind, igniting fears of losing my son as well. As I grappled with the possibility of another devastating loss, my mother, a steadfast source of support, offered reassurance, her words a comforting refrain amidst the turmoil. An hour later, relief washed over me as I received news of my son's rescue. However, medical advice dictated a week-long hospital stay for his recovery, prompting his transfer to a hospital room. Despite the harrowing ordeal, my husband remained absent, compounding my sense of isolation. Determined to provide for my son's needs, I returned home the following day to gather essentials and decided to bring him some fruit as a gesture of care. Wanting to express gratitude to the doctor who had aided us, I made a detour past the emergency room, only to find chaos unfolding within its confines. Sensing I might be in the way, I postponed my visit to the doctor, turning to head towards my son's room. It was then that I witnessed a startling sight: a man and a woman on a stretcher, their bodies entwined as if caught in a bizarre embrace. The scene hinted at a precarious situation, one where they appeared to be joined together, perhaps a consequence of a mishap during intimate moments. I navigated the chaotic scene, my mind filled with sympathy for those caught in such a vulnerable predicament. The embarrassment of being transported in such a manner must be excruciating, I mused, attempting to pass by discreetly. However, my thoughts were abruptly interrupted as my gaze locked with that of a familiar face. Under ordinary circumstances, the encounter might have been merely awkward. Yet for me, it was nothing short of shocking. My husband lay on the stretcher, his expression betraying surprise at our unexpected reunion. "What are you doing here?" I blurted out, astonishment coloring my voice. Caught off guard, my husband stammered, "Ah, well, I've caught my sister's cold," his words faltering in the face of my inquiry. Confusion clouded my mind as I grappled with the surreal coincidence of encountering my husband in the same emergency room where our son had been admitted just the day before. Questions swirled in my head as I watched him being transported, unclothed, alongside another woman. Who was she, and why were they together? Amidst my bewilderment, my gaze met the eyes of the woman accompanying my husband. Despite the chaos, a flicker of recognition sparked within me. Even in my state of disarray, I couldn't deny the truth staring back at me. This woman was my husband's mistress. As I glared at her, a familiar voice cut through the tumult, pulling me from my thoughts. "Why on earth is Christina here?" the voice exclaimed. Recognition dawned upon me. Of course, the woman beside my husband was none other than Brenna, his sister. Time seemed to stretch out endlessly as I processed the surreal unfolding of events. Suspicions of my husband's deceit had simmered within me, but I never anticipated this revelation. Even if he had come to check on our son, his entanglement with another woman, especially his own sister, was beyond comprehension. Despite the urge to confront them immediately, the sight of my husband and his sister being wheeled away on a stretcher forced me to restrain myself. I knew they couldn't evade scrutiny, so I resolved to address the situation later. Suppressing the surge of emotions, I redirected my focus to my son, the initial reason for my visit. With a heavy weight settling in my chest, I sought solace in his room, attempting to untangle the jumble of feelings swirling within me. When I checked my phone, it was flooded with messages from my husband, each one attempting to gloss over the situation. Notably absent was any mention of our son's hospitalization. Deciding to continue ignoring him, I waited patiently for another hour. Soon enough, the doctor who had tended to my son the previous day appeared. Their smile was reassuring as they delivered the news. Your son is doing remarkably well. His recovery is progressing faster than anticipated. His fever has subsided and his condition has stabilized. Initially, we were concerned about the possibility of infection, but it seems he was suffering from heat stroke in addition to a cold. The doctor's praise for my actions brought a sense of validation, even though I knew much of it was owed to my mother's guidance. I made a mental note to express my gratitude to her, perhaps with a thoughtful gift of fancy meat next time. I offered a deep bow of gratitude to the compassionate doctor before me, though beneath my relief for my son's improving health, a storm of anger brewed within me. It was clear that I was about to confront a significant ordeal. As I struggled to contain my emotions, my son's innocent remark about my stern expression snapped me back to composure. I quickly donned a smile for his sake. Mama's face is just pretending to be scary. I'm not scared, I reassured him before stepping away with a promise to return soon. Exiting the hospital, I braced myself for the impending conversation with my husband, who had bombarded me with over 100 missed calls. The moment he answered, a torrent of excuses spilled forth. It wasn't what it looked like. There's an explanation, he'd insisted, attempting to justify his actions. His misplaced priorities only fueled my frustration. Shouldn't his foremost concern be our son's well-being? There's no way a man so absorbed in such a despicable act with his own sister, neglecting our son's well-being, could ever truly care. I muttered to myself, the bitterness evident in my voice. With a husband like him, I feared for our son's future. Recognizing the bleak reality of my husband's character, I made the difficult decision to divorce him. Despite the challenges ahead, I was determined to navigate them for the sake of my son. Turning to face him, I unleashed the pent-up anger that had been simmering within me. So, while our son was suffering, you were preoccupied with that, weren't you? Indulging whenever you had a moment to spare, and with your own sister, no less. It's utterly repulsive, I spat out at him. He stood speechless, unable to offer a defense. Pressing on, I delivered my final blow. Oh, and just so you know, I've already informed your parents. I won't involve your company, for now. It would be a shame if you couldn't meet your obligations for alimony and child support. Goodbye, I concluded, severing ties with my husband with those parting words. 3 days later, my son made a full recovery, surpassing all expectations. With the discharge process complete, I returned home, embracing my beloved son's restored health. Naturally, my husband was nowhere to be found. In the aftermath of the ordeal, my husband sought me out to offer his apologies in person. Yet, as he pleaded for forgiveness, I sullenly handed him the divorce papers I had already prepared and signed. This wasn't an isolated incident, I responded, my voice devoid of warmth. I know the truth now. Your sister confessed everything. I anticipated my husband's reluctance to accept the reality of our situation, knowing that our path to divorce wouldn't be easily agreed upon. To confront him and ensure his silence, I decided to approach his sister, who was complicit in the affair. Congratulations on your upcoming wedding ceremony with your boyfriend, I began, masking my disdain with forced politeness. Thank you. I was actually thinking of crafting a clever story to share the news. Would you like to hear it? She replied, oblivious to the gravity of the situation. Are you planning to disclose everything to everyone? I interjected, my tone sharpening. I want the truth to come out. It's time people see you for who you truly are, I retorted with a smirk, relishing the power of my revelation. Please, don't do this. It would destroy my life, she pleaded, a hint of desperation in her voice. Feigning contemplation, I maintained a composed smile as I proposed, I suppose I could keep this under wraps on one condition. How about you disclose every detail of your encounters with my husband? Then perhaps I'll consider staying silent, though rest assured, your brother will still feel the sting of betrayal. What say you? Without a moment's hesitation, my sister-in-law acquiesced, her desperation palpable. Please spare him the pain. I'll tell you everything, she confessed readily. Confronting my husband with the truth left him reeling, his beloved sister's betrayal cutting him to the core. Overwhelmed, he collapsed from the shock, only to awaken and promptly sign the divorce papers, burdened by the weight of his betrayal. Taking decisive action, I enlisted the aid of a lawyer to secure divorce, custody of our son, and the appropriate financial support. Though my husband initially balked at the demands, a whispered reminder of his potential exposure prompted his compliance. With a heavy heart, he departed the lawyer's office, resigned to the consequences of his actions. Following the revelation of the affair, word somehow reached my husband's workplace, leading to a stern rebuke from his superiors. A month later, he faced the harsh consequence of dismissal, forced to seek employment at a food factory. Now, tasked with adorning cakes with strawberries to fulfill his obligations for alimony and child support, he found himself ostracized among his coworkers, his past indiscretions a constant source of discomfort, fueled by incessant rumors, particularly among younger female colleagues. As for my husband's sister, despite my discretion in withholding the truth, the details of her involvement inevitably surfaced. Her engagement swiftly crumbled under the weight of suspicion when her boyfriend, echoing my own doubts, enlisted the services of a private investigator to uncover the truth. Following the shattered engagement, she found herself facing a hefty compensation demand, forcing her to seek employment at a nightclub to make ends meet. Recently, her ex-boyfriend, perhaps feeling a pang of remorse, handed her a compromising photo of their affair with a casual, "keep it for when you might need it." She couldn't help but marvel at his audacity as she stowed it away in her drawer, a potential leverage should her husband attempt any further indiscretions. In pursuit of a fresh start, she relocated to her parents' home, where she's rebuilding her life with their unwavering support, especially in raising her son. Despite their geographical distance, her parents eagerly offer assistance whenever needed, although she strives not to burden them excessively, reserving their help for times of genuine necessity. Since recovering from that severe fever, my son has enjoyed pristine health, almost as if the ordeal never occurred. Remarkably, he's received awards for perfect attendance 3 years running, seemingly oblivious to the absence of his biological father. Witnessing his contentment each day brings me unparalleled joy. On another note, our family has expanded with the addition of Angel, a charming white cat. Originally a frequent visitor to our yard, Angel quickly endeared himself to me. Reluctant to bid him farewell upon moving, I brought him along to my parents' home. Now, he's formed a close bond with them, becoming an integral part of our family alongside my son. As I sit on the porch, gently stroking Angel's fur, I find solace in the warmth of family and companionship. Watching my son thrive in the loving embrace of my parents, with Angel by our side, fills me with a profound sense of contentment and gratitude for the life we've built together.